Good morning and welcome to the National Boy Band Convention. My name is Matthew Hanna and I am the founder and CEO of the National Boy Band Committee. Today's focus of the convention is fairly simple. We will take a look at the boy bands as mentioned in the convention name and the reasons why they broke up. We will understand why these bands peaked and why they broke up and why some were able to get back together and some weren't. Today, joining us, we have representatives from popular boy bands who will converse about the impacts of the boy bands that they've made and why they are in the state that they are in today. We have Anna Heat, head representative of Big Time Rush, a Nickelodeon group that made its way to fame through a TV show. Next, we have Sylvia, representing One Direction, by the way, is one of my favorite bands, if I do say so myself. And lastly, we have Angelina, head representative of the newly regrouped Jonas Brothers. May we please get a round of applause for our lovely representatives. All right. However, before we get into this discussion of the boy bands, let's take some time to explain the dynamic of boy bands in general and the impact they've had on the economy as a result of their conflicts. I'm now going to pass it on to Anna Heath, and she's going to go ahead and introduce you into a lesson.
Thank you, Matt, for the lovely introduction. I will now take us through a brief lesson on group dynamics in boy bands. Boy bands typically assign basic roles to each group member. For example, in Big Time Rush, Kendall Knight is the heartthrob leader that everyone is obsessed with, while Logan is the brains of the squad, who is more shy. I personally liked Kendall a lot when I was younger. Groups usually assign different roles to members to appeal to different types of fans. To continue, boy bands usually market towards young women, which relates to their lack of masculinity in the music industry. Their marketing strategies appeal to young women who would love to wear shirts with their boy crush of the month on them. According to a research study conducted by Tamia Braggs from Santa Clara University titled The Impact of 90s and 2000s Boy Bands, she explained how merchandising was a major aspect of boy band dynamic. Boy bands from the 90s and 2000s started this trend of making shirts and pillows with the band's faces, really appealing to the female perspective, which was their target audience. If I do say so myself, I used to have a Big Time Rush t-shirt and practically lived in it, not to mention all their pillows. This idea of merchandising and appealing to a certain demographic relates to what my counterpart in this convention, Angelina, will be speaking about.
Thank you, Anna Heat. So, as she said, I will be explaining the dynamics of boy bands. So, let me take it upon myself to explain the impact of boy bands have on the economic in terms of business. In the article called The One Direction Infection, the media representative of boy bands and their fans by Annie Lyons, it highlights the impact of boy bands have on younger girls, such as us, similar to what Anna Heat mentioned. In the article, it goes in depth about evaluating boy bands and fan culture. It explains boy bands and exhibit high commercial success and have a considerable cultural impact. This relates to the idea of boy bands' marketing strategies and how they appeal and try to appeal to the target audience. This same research goes to in depth about how boy bands try to incorporate both feminine and masculine attributes in order to create a broader audience broader audience by banning these general traits. So you might think to yourself, how does this impact on the economic? Well, by creating a larger audience, boy bands have created a high gross of tours. In a blog by Molly Brothers, one into recently suggests that boy bands like the Jonas Brothers and One Direction broke these stereotypes previously placed on the boy bands and their target audience. It mentions how these bands were able to gross and made up 282.4 million. This sounds to me a considerable impact that boy bands had and their dynamics to the comedy for so many years. And we can take a look on why some of these boy bands, even though with their success, fail at the end.
Yeah, just to jump in there, I've heard that boy bands do break up because of religious beliefs as well as solo careers and many more other reasons. So, what do the rest of you have to say about this?
Great job, Matt, for keeping us updated with boy bands. I will explain why some bands experience conflict despite being so successful. let us take into consideration One Direction, your favorite boy band. Isn't that right, Matt? Boy bands, being that they are small groups, tend to experience conflict because they tend to feel frustrated about the band's goals. For example, One Direction experienced conflict with Zayn Malik. According to an article by Business Insider, Zayn explained how he struggled with never making any friends within the band group due to his issues trusting people. This really showcases the impact trust has on conflicts, which makes it really difficult to reach the end goals of the group. Regarding Matt's comment about solo careers, Harry Styles has had an amazing run as a solo artist. As exclaimed in the same article, he indicated that being part of the band changed his life. Although he understands the wishes of his bandmates, he doesn't agree with them as he owes everything of his solo career to One Direction. Other bandmates such as Niall and Liam also launched solo careers after the band's official split in 2015. To relate this back to conflict, the original reason as to why the band split up was due to creative differences. They went on to create solo careers, as Matt stated, which was their solution to their conflict. Instead of accommodating the needs Zayn presented, the other bandmates chose to accommodate with him and came to the solution that leaving the band was the best decision. By taking into consideration their successful run as a boy band, it was ultimately short-lived because of the conflict they encountered, thus showcasing the impact that conflict has on the band itself.
Yeah, great job, ladies, at explaining the overall dynamics of boy bands and the impact they've had on the economy as a result of their conflicts. Now let's get into the most important part by far of this convention. Let's discuss who the best boy band is and why. And just to, sprinkle a little love in there, I think One Direction, and believe me here, I believe it truly, knocks the rest of these bands out the ballpark. And I believe that they were the structure into what allowed these other bands to become what they are today.
Wow, Matt, as a CEO and founder of this convention, I don't think that you should be picking sides on who your favorite band is, but whatever. I think that my boy band is the best because they got back together. And I don't want to hear people say it's because they had a close relationship. Take a look at your favorite band. They practically live together, but I don't see them making new albums anytime soon like my band.
I agree. Let's not pick favorites. And he's right. My boy band was able to get back together because of their brotherhood. They were able to put their solo careers to the side and got to back together for their fans. And we wanted them to. So they put their ego aside and did it for us.
I beg to differ. My boy band had the best fandom in relation to you guys.
Yeah, and just to add on to Sylvia, I completely agree with her statement. But, let's just take a second, Sylvia, and just, take their input on what, they're seeing and the way that they feel. So I'm going to ask you this question, on the sake of One Direction. Why is One Direction the best band? And give me some statistics if possible.
Okay, thanks, Matt. According to the research done, as you can see here, Annie Lyon explained in her research that One Direction had 73% of articles written about them in a sample, while the Jonas Brothers had 12% and Big Time Rush had a whopping 0.95%. We had more articles written about my band than both Jonas Brothers and Big Time Rush combined. Not to mention the impact they have had on their fans. There was a literal movie series that happened because of Harry Styles. Plus, fans use social media to give them a platform, such as Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter that were filled with stan accounts. I don't remember a single fan page of BTR or the Joe Bros as interesting as one of One Direction.
Wow, I think that's truly amazing, and that how, One Direction can have more articles than both these bands combined. I think that's just truly, really puts it out there in their fame, as well as really their fan platforms and how fans were really, pushing them through, social media. And that really, I think, just shows how much fame that they do have compared to these other two bands. Very interesting.
Wow, articles, how exciting. What are you going to measure next? T-shirt sales?
Or ticket sales.
That's a good one. Let's go back to talking about the real reason why we are here, which is why boy bands break up and why some get back together. It's obvious that Big Time Rush was able to get back together because they cared about their fans. Fandom was a major part of who the guys were. They watched their Nickelodeon show and in return supported their music. My boy band was able to get back together because they felt that their fans deserved more than what they were left with the show's ending. What do you have to say about that, other than the fact that they truly care about their fans enough to put their differences aside and make music that their fans love?
Perfect explanation, Anahi. I completely agree. My boy band was able to get back together by putting their difference and conflicts aside. They had a falling out due to creative differences and mainly because of Nick leaving. However, the boys were able to put it to the side and see past their differences and come back together and saw the importance of being a family.
That's very true, but didn't they also have solo careers? And just to input there, I don't want to, make this a big thing, but also, I did somewhat like the work of Nick.
Yeah, yes, Matt. They both Nick and Joe were doing amazing solo career. They had their own business and stuff, but ultimately, the importance of family and making music together brought back their starting point of making music, which made songs they like for their fans. We all know that Nick was the one, as I stated earlier, had the conflict with the management and wanting to be on his own and voice his opinion in order for his brothers to be set free for Disney. Um, and he wanted him and his brothers to make music by themselves to ultimately be free and have their separate lives away from their childhood. However, the power of the fans and the love they share for music brought the brothers back together. And despite their solo careers, they did it.
Okay, okay. Are we done with the sappy family stuff?
Sounds like someone wants their boy band back together.
All right, all right. Even the fact that, One Direction didn't get back together, I still believe, and, I do know that regardless of that fact, they are still a better boy band than you. So let's go ahead and get into that right now.
Matt. Well, to start off, the main conflict faced by One Direction was creative differences, like the Jonas Brothers. But the only reason why my band wasn't able to get back together was because they aren't blood related.
But they always talked about how their bond was so brotherly because they all lived together.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that they aren't able to put their creative differences aside. One Direction ultimately broke up, leading to the start of amazing solo careers. I don't know about you guys, but the boys in my group made it big in their solo careers. Harry won the Grammys and Zayn went on tour. I didn't hear anyone's solo career being that good. So when you guys say that the reason the bands got back together is because they're better than mine, that's not the case. It relies on the fact that the members of my band are happy and succeeding in their solo careers. And if they were to get back together, it would change the world, specifically Matt's. But it doesn't change the fact that each boy band has its own spot in history and the impact they had on the world. I rest my case at that. Overcoming underlying conflict or not doesn't make a band better than the next.
I totally understand where you're coming from.
I did too. I never thought about it that way. I guess everyone has to focus on their boy bands and to take into consideration of the real impact conflict has on the members of the band, not just fans surrounding them.
Well, I think that's very beautiful out of this, whole time that somewhat you guys were able to put aside your differences and understand where each person was coming from. I think that my world would be flipped upside down though if One Direction did get back together, but we do think after about what Sylvia went ahead and said about conflict and the impact it had on the boys themselves. Well, now that we had this thorough and exhausting discussion where people really showed their passion for middle-aged men, I like to personally thank my speakers, Anna Heat, Angelina, and Sylvia for making it out here and holding pretty interesting cases about conflict in boy bands and their impact on the economy. I'm your convention speaker, Matt, and I can't wait to see you at our next National Boy Band Convention, where we will practically have the same discussion and hopefully try to get a little farther in this topic and, come to a more thorough consensus of what boy band was the best. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night. I just got a little song for you guys before we end it. Guess what song it is? You light up my world like nobody else. The way you flip your hair gets me overwhelmed. But when you smile, I break down and it's hard to tell. No, you don't know you're beautiful.